What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm joined by the founder and CEO, or owner, I guess you could kind of say, just to make it easy, from Asio Gear. I got Joe Miles on the podcast. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Hey, man, glad to be here, buddy. How's everything going in your world other than chasing little ones around?
Man, it's been a heck of a summer. It's a lot busier than from normal summers, I guess, from the years past, obviously with the baby and everything like that. Just not as much whitetail specific stuff as much as I would like to do. As of recently, the good news is, though, as we're getting closer, the itch is starting to come even more like at a full speed ahead. And my wife is, with the baby getting a couple months older and being a little bit more, I don't want to say easier to deal with, but just finding that routine now, it's allowed me to go head up to New York, scout New York for a little bit, get here locally in central PA, go back home to northeast PA. And it's also being able to set up a trip to Ohio here in the next couple weeks. So we're getting there, Joe. We're absolutely getting there, man. And it's really cool to see what you've been up to this spring and early summer, as even now, man. You've been traveling all over the world, killing critters all over, and testing out some gear. And I'm excited to chat about that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, we keep a pretty itchy trigger finger around here, and hence the reason we started Asio, so that we could test a lot of stuff and do what we love, which is hunting. You know, we love to bow hunt. That's what we like to do, and yeah, it affords us the opportunity to have work trips. I'm putting that in air quotes for guys that are listening on other platforms. But yeah, man, it has been. It's been a good, I guess, late winter, spring into early summer, and now we're completely gearing up for whitetail. We start August 15th here. Got a bunch of cameras in the swamp, so trying to locate a few good deer and try to keep my son out of some of my good spots. So it's a full-time challenge.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. That's so early, August 15th. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's hot, buddy. It'll be 95, 100 degrees, and humidity levels like 80%. So it'll be, but we love it. So it's unique to South Carolina, you know, the velvet season, and it's just something we've done for forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you were talking about doing your trips and testing out stuff, man, I want to know, just because I appreciate that. I like when someone that, I don't care who it is in general, someone that really puts forth effort and sticks with it, right? That doesn't just, do one video or something along those lines. Like you were doing daily testing, showing some aspects and talking about on the Mission Whitetail podcast, and obviously testing some things out on your trips. What was your main goal with this, of testing all like the new broadheads and arrows and your bows? You know, because I know how particular you are when it comes to your gear and also for hunting. So what was your main goal with this?
Yeah, you know, anytime you've got a system that's really working for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got something that you've spent 15, 20, maybe, 15 years putting together and using pretty much the same thing for 5 years straight, basically, and it working really, really well. You know, there's an old saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But you're always, or I am always, tinkering with things in the off season and listening to what people have to say about gear they use, and try to keep an open mind. You know, I don't think that what I've got is the end all be all system. It is a way. It is not necessarily the only way. And so I was presented with a new bow to try. I bought the bow, but I was told by a lot of people that I respect that it's a really, really good shooting bow, and was presented with quite a few testimonials about a couple new broadheads. And for me to change from my system that I've been using, I was like, okay, I'm open-minded. I'll give it a shot. And so I got the bow in, got the broadhead in. We've got some molds that we shoot broadheads into to see how they perform. It's a very consistent mold. And, we try the stuff on that, shoot the bow. see how we like it, see how it aims, see how the draw cycle works, see how quiet it is, see how fast it is with our hunting setups. And that can give you a little bit, that can give you some tech specs to go on. But the real proof is getting it in the woods and getting some animals, under its belt, a new system. And I'm not saying that like axis deer and the African animals aren't important, but it affords you an opportunity that if you do mess up, that it's not a 190-inch whitetail, which is at the absolute top of, I think, mine, and all your listeners. 190 is just a fictitious number, but a big mature whitetail.
Right.
So having the opportunity to do a couple axis bucks, they're as big or bigger than a whitetail, and then going over to Botswana and shooting a lot of bigger, tougher animals than whitetail, I was able to put, a new broadhead that I hadn't used before and a new bow through the paces and get real live feedback. So that's the whole point is I will, listen to what guys say, and we'll do some testing here in our warehouse. It's basically shade tree back warehouse testing. We're not in a scientific lab by any stretch, but it has proven to be effective and give us some results that we can take to the woods and then really, really test stuff out.
Yeah. So you were mainly testing out the latest Prime RVX, is that correct?
Yep. That's 100% right. The latest Prime and then the Mega Meat broadhead. I did have 2 of the prototypes of their new T2, the G5 T2 broadhead. And so I was able to test that stuff out and give it a real fair shake.
Nice. And I know you were excited about that T2 originally because it was very similar to the Rage hypodermic that you were a big believer in and tested a lot and killed a lot with. So, with using those 2 broadheads, what were your kind of any surprise takeaways with either one of those?
Yeah. So I was at the ATA show, and Brian Anderson, the head of marketing at G5 and Prime, he showed me the T2s. And John Dudley, who I've talked with just a little bit on Instagram. I don't know John, and he doesn't know me, but we've talked a little bit about that broadhead on Instagram. He was instrumental in creating the T2, and it looks very, very similar to that Rage Trypan. That was the broadhead that I'd used for a long, long time, was the Trypan. And when, I fooled with it at ATA, and I thought, man, this is just really a beefed up. The blades are going to be those Lutz blades. They're going to be a lot sharper than the Trypan. The ferrule is beefed up. It was a little bit shorter, but beefier. The tip was a little bit beefed up, and the retention system I liked. I was really excited about it, and I went up to the Deer Society to do a couple hunt breakdowns and a couple podcasts with them. I do a trip up there every year, and JJ had 2 of them, and I was playing around with them on his desk, opening and closing them. He had them screwed on arrows, and I was like, golly, this retention is tight. I wasn't expecting it to be this tight. The tolerances, I mean, it was hard to open. Like, you push it into the corner of a desk, and it took some force to get it to open.
Wow.
And all of a sudden I got a little bit of, second guess on it. I was like, if it's going to be this hard to open, I mean, obviously it's not going to open in flight. There's no chance of that happening. It will not open. It's just too tight. But is it going to open on game?
Right.
And so I said, you know what? I was going to Botswana, and they've got warthogs and impala, which are smaller than whitetail, real thin-skinned animals. I said, I'm going to shoot one of these. African game, normally their vitals start at the crease and then go forward. So you normally shoot that stuff through the shoulders, but you can shoot them right behind the shoulder and still get lung. And I said, man, I'm going to shoot a warthog and with one of these and just see how it opens. And sure enough, I think like day 2, a big fat male warthog came in, a boar, and was getting a drink of water. And I shot him and shot him just a little bit back, and he spun around and took off, and blood was flying everywhere. And we tracked him. He went about 70 yards, and we found him, and we came back and we tried. And when we found him, it was a perfect 2-inch hole, entry exit. I measured it. I looked at it. I was like, man, that thing, I mean, and it was close range. It had no problem opening. 2-inch on the, which is it's supposed to be 2-inch on the front, 2-inch on the back. Animal went 70 yards. We go back and start looking for the arrow, and we can't find it. We can't find the arrow, can't find the arrow. We kept looking, doing circle, and it was 55 yards from where the warthog was. Wow. It zipped through him like hot butter, and I was blown away by it. Really, I was like, this thing is tough. So next was I had another one, and a Gims buck is about a 450 to 500 pound animal, depending on how big they are. Big male and big bull. And the next animal, I said, well, I'm going to, if I can get a crack at one of those, I'm going to shoot it through the scapulas and see how this thing does. Sure enough, 32 yards, shot it through there, same exact results. This one ran a little further. I think it ran about 100 yards, huge blood trail, arrow. And both, I've actually got, it's funny we're talking about that because I've got both those heads laying right here on my desk. Those are the T2s that I shot in Africa, and they are in absolutely pristine, perfect condition. But anyway, so we tried those, and I was very, very impressed. Like if I would definitely switch from a Trypan to the T2 if it hadn't been for the mega meats. And if you want to dive into that, or if we're talking too much about gear, we can certainly switch on to something else.
No, I'm fascinated to hear about your mega meat experience.
Yeah, I was, also I'm always, I guess, skeptical or try to be the devil's advocate. And when we tested the mega meats through our mold, the blades bent a little bit, and I'd had that happen, hitting ground through whitetails and stuff. When the Trypan would go through, one of the blades may bend a little bit, but never in the mold that we shoot into had I had the blades bend. So I hadn't written them off, but I wasn't really sure, I guess is the best way to say it. And I said, well, I'm gonna go shoot this Axis buck in Texas, or try to. And that was the first animal I shot. And I think that video, you can see that video on Mission Whitetail or on Asio, because that Axis buck came in. We actually had the guys from Heartland Bowhunter come out and film that. So they did an incredible job putting that film together. It's very cinematic, pretty cool video. But regardless, first animal I shot with the mega meat, and I made a really good shot on him, and he went 60 yards, piled up, went down. Arrow was laying about 10, 15 yards on the other side of him. Blades were a little bit bent, but there was a hole through this Axis buck the size of my fist. I literally could put my fist, it was like you sent a hand grenade through it. And it was in the pocket. I mean, we got 2 ribs, we got no scapula, no shoulder, nothing, but and the blood trail, I mean, whether I'd hit lung or not, if the thing would have bled to death in 100 yards, the blood trail was stupid. So obviously that gets my attention. Blood trail like I've never seen before. So I was like, I'm taking these to Africa. I got 2 of the T2s, and I'm going to take 7 or 8 of these mega meats, and took them over there. And other than that Gims buck and that warthog, I shot everything else with the mega meat. 2 600-pound kudu, a 700-pound roan at 72 yards with the mega meat. And when I tell you, it wrecked African game like nothing I have ever seen. I am not underestimating that. I shot a kudu, and it is so graphic, the recovery of him, that I can't post it. I tried to put, when I posted some of the entry and exit holes, I'd put them in black and white so it doesn't look as bad on social media, so I don't get shadow banned or whatever it is they do to you. But there is a kudu, the first one I shot at a water hole, that is, I mean, it was like where he fell over, you had cut on a fire hydrant and blown blood for 30 yards out past him.
Right.
And not to get crazy graphic, but bottom line, I'll land the plane here. in my quiver this year, I will have mega meats and I will have one T2 in there in
Mhm.
case I get into some thick stuff or I'm expecting a real quartering shot or something like that. It's literally going to replace my fixed blade.
Yeah.
That's what I'll have that broadhead for. Because I used to do that some. I would take a fixed blade, like an iron will or something, just to have in the quiver. If you got to follow something up and shoot, maybe you're going to have to shoot in some thicker stuff or whatever it may be. It's good to have a real sturdy fixed blade, or in this case, the T2. But man, for whitetail, there is, in my opinion, no better broadhead. And G5 should be paying me. They should be paying me for saying this, but they don't.
Yeah.
They don't pay me one dime. That is the experience I had with them.
That's great to hear.
If it had been the other way around, we just wouldn't have talked about them. We're not ones to bash brands or talk bad about stuff that maybe doesn't work right for us. But man, I just can't say enough good stuff about that head.
That's awesome that you had that experience. I had something very similar with the Mega Meat as well from a couple years ago. Like when they first got released, I was like, oh man, that's a crazy head. I want to try that. And I think by the time I got my hands on them here in the state of Pennsylvania, it was like the late season. And I always have like a little doe honey hole spot that I like to go in late season if they start herding up. And lo and behold, I did have that. And it, like you said, Joe, it wrecked her. I mean, it was something like I've never seen before. And the other thing about those, even though it's a bigger mechanical head, to me, my bow's tuned, all that stuff, they flew great. I had zero issues too with any type of it being any inch left, right, whatever it be. I had zero issues with that. So yeah, they are a phenomenal head. And I love the fact that you said too, that you've always had some sort of a different variety of a broadhead in your quiver, because since I've started the podcast 4.5 years ago, as we get closer to the season, I always do an episode like what I'll be running, what I'm doing. And it never fails every time I say, hey, I'm going to run, I don't know, 4 of this broadhead and then I have 1 of this. I always get questions like, why do you do that? And it was always because I hunt such different terrain. If it's a follow-up shot that I need to maybe do a little bit of a poke to get it out there, I want something that I know is flying perfect at maybe 40 yards or something like that. Or it's just going to offer that bigger cut basically, or something along those lines. So I like that you said that, because I come from that same mentality. And then plus too, if you need to double up and you want to try to maybe test the broadhead out, there you go. There's your other chance that you could do that.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right. And so, yeah, it's the Mega Meats and the T2 or G5's a great company too. They've got great guys that work there. The owners are engineers, and John Dudley, he's stacked bodies for a long time, and I think he was pretty instrumental in designing the T2. They basically just took the Trypan and put it on steroids. So for all you Trypan guys out there, man, y'all really need to take a look at that head. But yeah, man, it was a couple great trips. I finished up. I did one more axis hunt in Texas I guess it was the end of June, and that went well. I went out there with a buddy, and he got a nice one, and I shot another buck. We love to eat axis. Axis meat is absolutely delicious. My wife is a big venison fan. She loves venison, so we've got freezers full of venison, and when my son and his buddies come over, we'll barbecue and grill out and do all that stuff. So
all the good stuff, Joe. I like it. Well, with August 15th, man, right around the corner, what did you prioritize this off season when it comes to being prepared for it? Obviously, like the cool thing about doing all this gear testing stuff, like you've been in it, right? Like you've been shooting your bow. You're not like, oh man, I'm a month away, I better start shooting. Like you've been in it for the last couple of months, which is great. Any other thing like preparing specifically for the whitetail woods that you've been, hey, I got to prioritize this because of this didn't happen or this did happen in the previous season? Anything new for you along those lines?
Yeah. So I've got, I'm going to be basically hunting all the same properties that I'm going to be, that I'm hunted last year.
Okay.
Minus one. There's one in Kansas that is going to be new. I've already been out there and walked the property, found the 2 rut funnels, or it's really one funnel, but it's a north side and a south side. They're in two different areas of the funnel. So I've kind of got that mapped out. Here at home, I normally do an early season, and then, Alberta or Kentucky, that 1st of September for early season as well.
Mhm.
And then I'll come home, and our rut here really gets going in October. It's pretty early. And so I'll do some rut stuff here, but I've already got those places established. I know where I need to be. So for me in South Carolina, it's just a matter of getting some cameras out and getting some inventory of what's in there. And I did all that last weekend. I got a ton of cameras out. I've already got one of the bucks I passed on last year. I got pictures of him. There is a really big 10-point. I don't know if he's still alive or not. I did not kill him last year. I hunted him pretty hard, and he gave me the slip. But one of his running buddies is in there. I got quite a few pictures of him, and he's nice, and he would definitely be one that I would hunt this year. But then back to Kansas, I'm going to have to get back out there, get some cameras set up there, and I will do that. I actually got it on my calendar back there. Yep, it is the 29th and 30th of July. I'll be going to I'll go to the Michigan Mobile Hunter Show in Michigan, and then from there go to Kansas and work in Kansas on Monday and Tuesday, or Monday, and then fly home on Tuesday. And what I will be doing is getting 2 cameras out at both ends of that funnel, and I can explain that funnel real quick in a second. But and then I'll get 2 stands hung for both ends. And what it is, this is not a giant property. It's a small farm, but it has a huge washout that runs down the middle of it, and it forces the deer around each end. And one of them, I've got great access for a south wind, and the other one, I've got access for a north wind at the top of that washout and the bottom, and that thing forces the deer around it. And it's a huge creek that runs through this, and the property is like the only, call it 100 acres of timber in that area. And it is, and then if you zoom way out on the map, it's almost like an island of timber with a big creek, and then there's a washout on each end. So it is, if you sit your butt there long enough, it's south wind, you're at this end, north wind, you're at this end. It's pretty dadgum simple. If you sit those 2 places on those 2 winds, and there's a good deer in that area during the rut, eventually he's going to walk, by one of those places. So
that's exciting.
I'm certainly not calling my shot by any stretch of the imagination, but I hope by about November 15th or 20th, you and I are texting or talking, and I can say, I remember that thing, that spot we were talking about. I got one in there. So hopefully that happens.
That's awesome. As you're saying all this stuff, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, man, Joe really has it figured out. He could hunt August 15th in South Carolina, hunt some really awesome swamp bucks, and then he could go travel around and do an early season hunt somewhere, whether it be North Dakota or Kentucky, like you were just saying, in September, come back for the rut in South Carolina again. And then you could go for the big Midwestern states to hunt their rut in November. I'm like, dang, Joe, you have it really figured out.
Man, these are work trips. I'm going on. This is all work, research and development. I got to test this Asio gear out and make sure it's blending in different parts of the country and staying warm and all that. It's all work, research and development.
That's awesome, Joe. I like it. So when you look at this, like for right now, I might be a little bit too late to say on a macro level. Maybe you could even maybe discuss it on for your non-resident states. So like I know you hunt Ohio. I know you go to Kentucky and along those lines. But on a macro and then maybe a micro level, what are some of the things that you're really honing in on like right now to set yourself up for success later? Is it the trail camera placement? Is it the, like you said, obviously finding those rut funnels? What on a macro, then maybe on a micro level, are you really keen in on right now?
Yes. So my thing is late season. I don't do a ton of late season like that bitter cold Ohio, January, snow on the ground, coming to feed stuff. I've done that in the past. but I as I've gotten older, I normally migrate south I'm like a duck. I want to go to
Mm-hmm.
warm weather, so I'll get down to Texas or Mexico late season, and then again it's rut there then, so
Right.
it works out really nice. But the point being, I've kind of got two systems. I've got an early season system, which is exactly what's going on in South Carolina right now, where I'm trying to locate a buck,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what I'm trying to do. And then I will be semi-mobile to 100% mobile early season, meaning if I locate a buck either by glassing or trail camera and there's a pattern there of any kind, not just he walked by in the middle of the night, but it's on the edge of food, it's on the X, it's actually on the food, or it's going to the food, and it's a consistent move in daylight, which
Mm-hmm.
this time of year, July, August, should be pretty regular in daylight. Then what I can do is the farm that I hunt, I have permission to hunt in there, is only about 10 minutes from my office. And so what I can do is if I got those pictures, then I've already kind of got trees established, or ones that I know that I would hang depending on the wind, is I can zip down there at like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning or on my lunch break and get a stand hung. And then I can come back to the office, work the rest of the afternoon, take a shower here at the office, and then be back in there for the afternoon hunt. So that's how I would attack the early season here. So right now, all I'm doing in South Carolina is trying to locate. I got cameras out. I'll start going. We don't have a whole lot of ag, but there are some points that I can climb way up in trees and do observation sits in part of the swamp where the canopy's not terrible. And so I
Right.
can see some of the edges of these cutovers and stuff. And so that's going to be starting implementing that when we get to the 1st of August. When Alberta and Kentucky, those are almost quasi scouting hunting trips. Yes, the season is open, but I will go there and I don't force anything. If I can't glass beans with a big deer that's consistent, or some type of trail camera history of one that is on some type of an early season pattern, I just won't hunt. I would fly home from Alberta, be done with that, and then once we transition over to the rut, everything's already in place there for me. I'm not one of these guys that's fixated on these beds and where the buck's bedding and where's he feeding during the rut and the pre-rut. What I'm doing is I am a funnel hunter, and my mentor, if you will, Bobby Worthington, he and I have been friends,
Mm-hmm.
for quite a while, and we've taught a couple seminars together, but his philosophy has really rubbed off on me the last 3 seasons, and I'm pretty much completely a believer in when the weather is right, you get in the rut funnel with the right wind, and you rot there. And it may be the same stand for 7, 8, 9 days in a row. If you know there's a big one in that area and you are in the right place, meaning some type of geographical feature in his area that forces him in a certain direction, that's what a real funnel is. It's not just an hourglass shape between two big woodlots.
Right.
It's a legit geographical feature, a bluff, a huge ditch, a fence line, something that's forcing the deer movement a certain way. And so that's what I'll do. And I've got this, obviously, I mentioned I'd be going to Kentucky, Kansas to get that set up here in a couple weeks. And then I've already got the one in Kentucky established, and I've got one set up in Ohio. So all those spots can be blind hunted, and what I mean by
Mm-hmm.
that is they are worth going. The funnels are so good that you don't even have to know that there's a big deer in there if it's the
Right.
right time of year, and meaning it's the end of October through Thanksgiving, and you've got the right weather. It's the average temperature or 5 degrees below the average temperature or colder, then I'm going to have my butt in one of those rut funnel stands. And so that's kind of it's pretty simplified. I don't get it. I used to chase all the beds and trying to find the scrapes and the rubs, and yeah, all that's wonderful and good. And if that, like the funnel I killed out of in Kentucky last year, there were a lot of historic rubs in there, fresh rubs and fresh scrapes, and that makes it even that much better. But I do not have to have all that. I've got to have that geographical feature that's forcing those deer when they're getting on that long range travel, when they're between does or searching for does, when they're coming from A to B or from property A to property Z, and they're coming through there, they are going to be forced by my stand. So it's a pretty simple philosophy, but yeah, that's kind of what I have done to prepare for the year.
To me, it sounds like you simplify things.
Yeah, it really does. It's not simple finding the right tree. That part can be difficult in the right funnel, because you think you've found the funnel because there's a couple trails that come through there and they merge together, and yeah, that's good, but that could be doe trails going out to feed or something like that. It's got to be, and there is a bit of a science to that. And any of your listeners that want to come to one of those Bobby Worthington courses, those things are in February, March, April. So it'll be all over Asio's social media. But he does a really good job showing. And what the guys get to do is he's like, okay, within 300 yards of us down this way is a mega funnel. Go find it. And then you just kind of go off on your own, and you put together your plan of what you would do. And then we come down and kind of say, yeah, that's what we would do here, or no, or this tree's better, or that tree's better. And what are you going to do in the afternoon when the thermals start to drop, or in the mornings when they come up? Are you okay? So it's a simple process once you kind of figure out how to find that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, because like when you start bringing in the bedding and where's the food and all located, like now you're trying to figure out 10 different things instead of trying to figure out maybe 3 different things, right? And that was the key of kind of the last couple of weeks when I've been talking to some amazing individuals. It's like hearing what they have simplified, and it's just amazing how much more success over the years than that you're going to potentially become, because you're not just driving yourself crazy focusing on in on 10 different things. And
not to cut you off, but I want to go back again and say it is a way. It is not the only way.
Yep.
If on this split screen right here, if Andre DeQuisto was on your left side, what I'm looking at, he would be arguing with me to the bitter end and telling me that I'm crazy. And obviously he's got a bunch of really big deer on the wall. And, there's other guys that do it other ways. This is just a way. It is not the only way. It is what's worked for me and simplified things for me.
Yeah, I love that. Well said, Joe. And I before we dive into a couple other little topics, the one aspect, behind you is a calendar for those of you that are just listening to this. And Joe was talking about where he's going to be going for now before the season kicks off, and then where else is going. Then he's running a business on top of different things, and on top of that, he's a family man. Man, you got to be organized, and you have to, and you have to be.
I got some help, man. That calendar behind me is I think it's kind of blurred out, but it's pretty full, and there's a lot that goes on that. But I've got I've got some folks in here that really help me stay organized and stay on top of stuff, and it is a team effort, that is for sure.
So when you look at that, for number one, running your business and being a family man, like let's talk about like that's work aspect of things, but I've noticed even in myself, like with things that I got going on, how much more things I need to like tighten up with organizational skills when it comes to hunting season, because obviously I want as much time in the tree that I possibly can get. And I also want to have as much happiness in my household that I can get, that type of stuff. So the importance of being just organized with your planning and all that stuff. How do you approach that, just for like, from like guy to guy? Because obviously majority of these listeners are guys listening to that. Anything that you have learned, is it organizing now to make sure hunting season, and if there's things that map out like kind of scenarios, do you do anything that maybe could help the listeners or myself to be a little bit more organized going into the season?
I don't know about organizing. I think what you have to do is prioritize, right?
There you go.
And then you can't be afraid to do things outside of the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot, hey man, I'm a blue collar guy, I work from 9 to 5, and then I got to spend time with the family on the weekends. And that's number one important, right? That is super, super important. And where you can pick up time is after hours, right? You got little kids, you got a wife. I didn't have time to shoot my bow today. No, you did have time to shoot your bow today. You could have gotten up 45 minutes earlier, before the family got up. And well, I leave at 5. Well, okay, get up at 4, put one in a target in your garage, and just do some blind bail shooting. Work on your shot execution. At night, the kids go to bed at 7, 8, 9 o'clock. Wife's in bed reading a book or whatever it is. Slip out of there and same thing. Go do this. Go do some e-scouting if you need to. Try to look for some rut funnels that on Saturday when you're supposed to play golf with the boys, you axe that out and you go on Saturday to do your scouting. I mean, I was supposed to do a trip tomorrow. I've got a work conflict, but it was going to be a 20-hour day. I was going to leave at 3:30 in the morning, drive all the way to Ohio, put out those 3 cameras that I need to have out there, and then it's an 8-hour drive for me. It's going to take me 4 hours to get everything dialed, make sure the straps and everything are set, shooting lanes are good, and then it was an 8-hour drive back. So that was going to be a 20-hour day, and then Friday I was going to be right back here at 5 a.m. to meet my buddies to work out. So those are the type commitments that who's the Navy SEAL guy, Jocko Willett?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He says, do you really want to do this? And if you really want to do it, you will find every way to do it. If you kind of want to do it, you'll find every excuse possible not to do it. So that was I saw that a couple of days ago, and it really resonated. And I thought, yeah, man, that's exactly, he's right. If you really want to do it, you'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I agree with that statement as well. Joe, when you look at everything that you've just said, as far as the different places where you're going to be hunting, and, obviously mistakes kind of happen, in certain things. What mistakes going into the seasons do you try to avoid? Is it, anything from forgetting something, you know what I mean? Just like when you look at it, what are some mistakes where you're like, that can happen again next year?
Yeah, that's a great example, and I've got 2 of them that I did this off season, and two prime examples. The biggest thing is hoping that it's going to be okay.
Okay.
Hope is not an answer. And 2 examples. Africa, big kudu had been coming into this water hole, but the ground blind they had, the wind was bad. So we built a giant natural brush blind on the other side. And actually the trackers built the blind while we were hunting another place. And we got in there that morning at daylight, and they had built 2 shooting windows, two round shooting windows out of this brush blind. It was all made out of sticks and limbs, and it was awesome. It would have taken an army of engineers 3 days to build this thing. I've got pictures of it, I think, on my Instagram page. But anyway, I looked out the 2 windows, and one window was straight out this way, and you could shoot 30 yards if anything came from your left. And then I looked out the window to the right, and I could see half the water hole. Mm-hmm. And I sat down, and I didn't want to offend anybody, but in the back of my brain, I'm going, I can't shoot that whole water hole. We really either need to make this window bigger, or I need another window off the side here so I can shoot the whole water hole. Because Murphy's Law always in hunting comes to bat. It always does. It can go wrong. It does go wrong. So what happens? That stinking big kudu is following. They're in the rut. They come into the dadgum water hole, and they're on the other side where I can't shoot, and I'm watching them kind of through the brush of the blind. I can see his 55-inch long spiraling horns sticking up off his head, and I'm kicking myself. And another kudu got downwind of us and barked at us, and they all turned and ran off. And I said, see there, that I hoped that they would come to the other end, but I didn't fix what I knew was not right. Mm-hmm. So I cut a new hole in that blind. I mean, it's an all-day sit. You're staying in that blind all day. You know, we've got lunch with us and all that. So I cut another hole in there, fixed it up, patched it right, and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because they didn't get water, because that other one barked and scared them off, they came right back in and the same thing, and I shot the darn thing out of that new window I'd put in there. So that is something that mistakes that you can avoid. Hope is not an answer. If you know it's not right, if you know that limb is going to impede your opportunity to get a shot to your weak side, but I don't have my pole saw, I left it at home, or it's in the truck, and I'm going to have to ride all the way back and get it, by golly, hop down, go all the way back and get it. It will pay off in spades if you continually pick apart those little things and fix the things you know that need to be fixed.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny when you're saying all that, I was thinking in the back of my head, like a couple times when it's terrible. I say that a couple times when I'm up in a tree, and exactly what you said. It's like, man, I hope a deer doesn't come in this spot, or I hope a deer doesn't come from that like location. What do you think ends up happening every single time?
Yes,
that
sir.
always happens? It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah. You know, you get a bad wind or thermal drop this wrong, and you go, well, maybe they'll come in over here. No, that's not an answer. You got to get down and get out of there.
Yeah.
And when you start to develop that discipline and that paying attention to those little details, because it really is, hunting is a game of chance, right? I mean, it really is a game of chance. The deer always has a say. You stack the deck as much as you can in your favor, and there'll be one little thing that'll ruin it for you. It'll mess it up. You know, you got the wrong broadhead and you haven't practiced with it, and you're torquing your bow in a 35-mile-an-hour wind because you got to shoot around a tree at 28 yards, and it planes off and it goes over his back. You've put all that work in. The deer did what he was supposed to do, and you hadn't tested your stuff enough to know that I can make that shot in that situation. Man, We're in South Carolina. We don't get Kansas winds. We get a thunderstorm coming in, and we get some 10, 15-mile-an-hour winds. Man, I'm up in my tower shooting. You know, I got to test that stuff in the wind. I messed up on a water buffalo. I ended up killing him, but I messed up. I was in a 30-mile-an-hour wind in Argentina, and I had a light arrow, or my whitetail arrow, and I was going to shoot a 2,200-pound water buffalo. I had an iron wheel solid, one of their original solid broadheads, and I was going to shoot him in the crease, quite slightly quartering away. And, man, I shot, and it was blowing 30-something miles an hour, and it pushed that arrow probably 3 or 4 inches, and I ended up hitting him in the shoulder. It did kill him, but that was a lesson. Another one, man, I knew better than that. Yeah. I knew better than that. I just wasn't taking – I was in a ground blind and wasn't taking all that into consideration. Yeah,
I like that. What you know, as a health and physical education teacher myself, Joe, I like seeing that you still get after it. You know, like you get in the weight room, you're doing all these fun workouts. Like you just said, Friday, if you would have made this upcoming trip Friday morning, you'd have been meeting your buddies in the gym and getting after it. Now, I know training doesn't kill the game that we're after, but what have you noticed, like being able to still be active has it played any sort of role in your ability? Just because I look at yourself that starts in August, has the opportunity to go until January down Texas, down Mexico. That's a long friggin' season. It's not just, oh man, I can't wait for the whitetail season in October and maybe go out in the gun season in November and only hunt 10, 12 times. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not doing that. You're gone a lot. You're traveling a lot. The importance of your physical and mental state has to play some sort of role. I mean, anything that you could elaborate on regarding that?
Yeah, I think the physical fitness aspect, it creates discipline in your life, period.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're a hunter or a business guy or you work at wherever. It doesn't matter but because you're doing something that does not give you immediate results, right? It's something that you've got to do over and over and over and be consistent with it. It can take months and months to see results. And so it creates discipline. And from a health perspective, it's good for you. It
Mm-hmm.
keeps you healthy. And absolutely it plays a part in bow hunting whitetail deer. Yeah, there's lots of out of shape dudes that kill great deer every single year that don't train, that aren't Cameron Haynes, and I'm no Cameron Haynes by any stretch. But the point being, I can hold my bow back for 3 minutes if I have to. I can climb over that limb with my lock-on stand and hang it where it needs to go. I can go out in 95-degree weather and hang 15 different trail cameras and 4 stands on a Saturday from 8 in the morning to dark, basically, in July. I can do all that. Whereas what happens when you don't have a fitness component is you end up making excuses. You end up, well, I can get these other 3 next Saturday, and then that becomes the next Saturday, and then that becomes the next Saturday, and then the season's in. And well, I sure hope that they come by one of those first stands I put up, and that's not an answer.
Yep. I was going to say, you're limiting yourself and now you're hoping, right? Like
Yeah.
like you said, like you can go climb over that limb with your lock on as you get up at the tree, instead of saying, man, I hope I could get up there, or I can't go up there. You're limiting.
Or this spot's fine.
Yeah.
Knowing that it needs to go in that fork. You need to get up to that fork. But no, this will be okay. This will be fine. Because you can't physically do it.
Right.
And I'm not Spider-Man. I mean, I'm not flipping around up there, upside down like some kind of gymnast. But but I can get a tree stand where it needs to be, and physical fitness plays a part of that.
Yeah. Kind of closing remarks here, Joe. What anything cool that you're really excited for this upcoming season? Any new goals that you're setting forth for yourself?
Well, this is kind of funny, but so I've been back and forth with this traditional stuff, right? I shot it and I was all fired up about it. And Bobby is a 8-time world champion. Have you and I talked about this?
Just briefly when we got into, like when we met in person at the outdoor show, but we haven't gone down it like this.
Well, I'll land the plane quick on this one. But so Bobby is an 8-time world champion, not national, 8-time world champion, traditional shooter. And so I took all my stuff up there when we were teaching those seminars, and I was like, all right, Bobby, I'm pretty good with this thing, or I think I'm pretty good with it. Help me out. And I shot, and he goes, yeah, you're not bad. You're not bad at all. I think with some more practice, you'll be good. And I'm like, well, why don't you shoot with yours? Why aren't you using yours? And he goes, well, I'm not a good enough shot with it to hunt with my recurve. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, man, it's hard to kill a deer with a recurve with any consistency. And I hunt too dadgum hard, and these deer are too hard to get on. I want to make sure I kill them when they come in, and I'm just not a good enough shot. He said, you might be, but I'm not. And this is coming from an 8-time world champion. So it just completely took the wind out of my sails. I mean, I didn't throw my bow away, but I hung it up on the wall and just started shooting my compound again. And then I had a call with Cody DeQuisto the other day, And the first thing out of his mouth, we've got the same bow builder. It's Bushman Bows. Steve Jewett out of Indiana builds an awesome recurve. They call it a super curve recurve. It's really a cool bow. And he said, "Hey man," Cody did it. "Have you been? How's your Bushman, man? You shooting that thing a lot?" And I was embarrassed, and I was like, "No, man." He goes, "You can't listen to that. You got to get out there and do it." So kind of got the fire lit again. And then, I picked it back up and started shooting it. And it's super addictive, man. You start doing it and it's very humbling and it's super addictive. So you asked me goals. I would like to kill a deer this year with my traditional equipment and see where it goes. No, I am probably not going to take it to Alberta or Kentucky or Kansas. But I do believe I will take it to Texas and definitely here at home in South Carolina and see how that goes. So that is a goal of this year, to try to kill a deer with the old recurve, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, you just said it on the podcast, Joe, so now it has to happen.
I said I'm going to try. What is it, Yoda? You either do or you don't. There is no try. Yep. So I'm either gonna kill one or I'm not gonna kill one.
That's awesome, Joe. I appreciate you talking. You fire me up just every time I listen to your podcast, Mission Whitetail, or when you are a guest on others. And again, man, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to come on and speak with me and have this discussion. I know those of you listening are going to get a lot out of it. Joe is, again, a very successful hunter, business person, but also outside in his own personal life. Just a great guy to look up to, in a sense of see who's doing things the right way. So go check Joe out. Joe, where else could people maybe follow, watch you, see what you're doing over at Asio Gear, all that great stuff?
Yeah, so social media for me personally is just Joe Miles Hunting. That's Instagram, Facebook, and then email is joe@asiogear.com. We've got a YouTube channel. It's Mission Whitetail with Joe Miles that all of our podcasts go on, and then we do a lot of gear testing on there too. And then for Asio Gear, asiogear.com, and then social media is Asio Gear. So, yep.
Awesome. Well, again, I will do another shameless plug. If you are into gear at any sort of time or tinkering and testing and listening, definitely go back, check Joe's Instagram out, check out some of the Mission Whitetail where he talked about certain things with certain guests and all that stuff of the findings that he obviously spoke about on our podcast, but he goes in depth a little bit talking about his experience with that as well. So check that out, check Asio Gear out. But again, Joe, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for listening. We'll see you next week. Antler up.